Dum 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 dum. Hey there! It's another episode of Daily Stitchery with your friendly hostess Denise Matteau. Thank you for showing up. I hope you stay a while. Whoever, wherever, whenever you are. Welcome. And today I had a day of running errands, and since I use the bus, that can just take all day. But I get it done. I have some nice social time with certain people on the bus that I run into now and then, and had a great time, actually. Got things I needed. Got over to the Hobby Lobby. Oh, I got to stay away from that place. But I had to go because I decided this year to join a quilt block of the month group, and I found one. I'll put some links in the description or in the comments. I'll try to come back to the video and put links in the comments later. Greenland Quilter. I think that's her channel name. But if you put Greenland and quilt in, I'm sure you'll find it, because there aren't very many with that name, with the word Greenland in their title. But anyway, the ladies who like to gather there were talking about doing a quilt block of the month with a book called Alice's Wonderland. And we all committed to going ahead and buying it. I put it in my Amazon cart. As soon as my debit card recovers from today's shopping spree and releases some money, I'll be able to take that shopping cart and bring some of that stuff home. But my work on my cathedral window is going really well. I'm really surprising myself with this, and I found some easy shortcuts. I'm trying to use the original traditional method, which there are a lot of what look like cathedral windows, but they have found ways to change the structure of the square so that you don't have to do so much folding, which is kind of fussy, and it's all handwork. So if you just want to whack them out on a machine, there are some people, but those are really not the actual cathedral window, because most of them will lie fairly flat when you're done. And the beauty of cathedral window is its three-dimensional quality. And I'm not saying, I'm still only working on the blocks. I haven't got anything assembled yet. And I'm not saying it's going to look good. In fact, I'm already thinking of ways to hide my boo-boos, because that's the kind of person I am. I'd rather hide the boo-boo than rip the stitches out and start over. However, one of the fussy things about the traditional method is that you take your 10-inch, I'm using 10-inch squares. A lot of them actually start with much larger squares, but this works out. You take your 10-inch square and you fold it in half, and you sew a scant quarter down each end. Now, the fussy way of doing it is you then have to, I haven't got any at that stage, so I can't show you. But you then have to, you end up with something that looks like this, because you've got the seams that are going to meet as an envelope. Let's see, I've got one, yeah, here's one. The seams will meet as an envelope, and then you fold it again to get the final product, which is approximately 5 inches. I think it's a little less. The trick I found, I came across a video where they were doing it, and it looked easier, and I tried it, and it is not only easier, but I'm getting much cleaner corners. And that is, instead of doing that weird poofy thing, you start out the same way. You do the two sides, and then you make sure to have good clean corners, and just go in about an inch at each end. Not that way though. You have to start over. I'm screwing it up. The new method is you fold your square this way. Then you turn it right side out. Okay. And after you turn it right side out, I will get one ready to do the video showing you the whole thing instead of this screwy way. But when you turn it right side out, you can then fold it into the envelope. And you come out with clean, and the key to a good cathedral window, you have to have clean, nicely fitted corners, or it just won't work. And that's my problem. I can tell a lot of my corners are a little wonky. Let me see what I've got. These are my first ones. And as you can see, that's a little bit wonky. I decided what I'm going to do is probably some kind of embroidery over the corners where they're too wonky, and disguise it that way. But what I like about it is you get this beautiful, this is the back of the quilt. It's a quilt as you go. And you get this beautiful, simple square patch backing. And then these will be all the windows. I'm going to have this goldy beige in all these windows because it's some cheap cloth I happen to have, and this is just practice. But I'm really enjoying it. It only took one day to start to feel like I know what I'm doing. I'm still fussing with the corners, but look how neat these are. These are nice and crisp. See that? Because, whoops, there. Because I used the new method of turning them right side out and then making the envelope. And it's a lot easier. So I want to encourage anyone else out there who's thinking that the cathedral window is far too complicated and fussy a project. You might be surprised, and it is an excellent way to use those pesky scraps, which, by the way, that's another part of today's stitchery. I was thinking about this. I see all these videos where they're just overwhelmed with scraps, and they pull out these piles of, and I'm not going to say that I don't have some piles like that. I'm not letting you see them. But because, for one thing, I have been working hard against my inner hoarder. I looked around the apartment approximately a year ago, last spring, and I said, oh my God, I'm turning into a hoarder. So I started purging, and I really just, if it's not useful, get rid of it. And what happens is people start complaining they have all these scraps, and they have to get rid of them, and they come up with all these projects, and that's fine. But there's a different approach to the whole question of fabric and your fabric supply for your quilting. Think of the fabric the way an artist thinks of his paint box. When an artist is finished with a painting, he has this beautiful landscape, okay? The paints, he doesn't throw away the paints that he didn't use that are still in the tube. He just cleans everything up and puts it away until the next time he's going to make a painting. Because all those same colors are going to be useful again. And it goes not just to how you think about the scraps you already have. And I know there's other people talking about this too, where they point out that if you color code your bins so all your yellows are in one and all your screens or in another, it makes it's not only easier to find what you need, but when you're thinking of what you might want to do, it's easier to just look at it all and see, something will occur to you as you look at those fabrics. But, which just happens with an artist and his paints too, because an artist is just flipping through his sketchbook, and then it's like, yeah, I think I'll do this or that. But what I also suggest is that you take a look at your shopping habits for your quilts. A lot of people buy according to the project, okay? And I have a funny story I'm going to tell about a high school home ec teacher. I'll get to that in a minute. And sewing. Oh, that was so funny when I was in high school. But if you consider that if you're going to spend time making quilts on a fairly continuous basis, then just like the artist, your sewing room is your studio, your fabrics are your paint box. And so every artist starts out, if the traditional way of education, the artist starts out with just a few basic colors. The idea being to learn how to get all of your values, your lights and darks, and the emotional impact, and all of your effects out of those few colors, and only add more colors as you get better at what you're doing. Right? So you can apply that to quilting, that you start out building a foundation of colors that are going to be necessary for most designs. Your basic colors. I see some of these sewing rooms that people put on their YouTubes, and they've got a million different cute little novelty prints and stuff, which is overwhelming because you can't just use every print and everything. But if you have a basic collection of fabrics of fairly neutral designs and colors, and then you bring the other things in for each project, like if you're doing a quilt that's specifically for somebody, a little boy who's into trucks, for example, and you want to put an automotive theme into the quilt, yeah, you'll go out and maybe buy some trucker printed cloth for that. And then, of course, use that print to plan the colors around it. But here's, what I'm doing. One of these days I have to pull my whole stash out and sort through it and show it. It's not very big, but it'll show you what I mean. But I'm building, this year I've decided I'm going to build warm brown and just warm tones, okay? And so I've got a neutral polka dot there and a fairly neutral tiny floral print. That'll mix in with almost anything. It's got some blue and red in it, so it's going to be right. And I've decided my background fabric is going to be creamy white, but instead of just buying 4 yards of, which you should do, you should have buy as much as you can in one lump of an inexpensive fabric like muslin, lightweight muslin, because you can use that for your foundation backings if you start doing foundation piecing and stuff like that. But to build up a supply, I'm building up a supply of these creamy white on white prints because I love them. They'll all over the quilt, it'll look very unified, like a cream colored background. But when you look at it a little closely, you'll see that it's a mixture of white on white prints of different kinds. I mean, you can't, from a distance, from the camera, you can't even tell, really. I don't think you can see that this has a very faint leaf print in it. And my plan is, by doing this, I won't really have an overwhelming pile of scraps, because that will continue to be well coordinated into other designs. And I'll only have to, and because of the nature of always buying 100% cotton, you get a fairly similar fabric each time. And some of these, like that little flower print, I have some of this already in my quilts from about 10 years ago. Some quilts that I made back in 2016 has this very same fabric, and here they are still making it and selling it because it's a classic, traditional. And yeah, I love the big fancy Kay Facet and Tula Pinks and those. But those should be your accents, and not, if your whole studio is full of those, then you're always going to be, oh, what do I do now, what do I do now? But if you have a bunch of classic colors and also a collection of solids, and like I say, don't fuss over the exact amount to make a particular quilt. But notice, well, okay, this is a big quilt. Check, look for the discounts. Like today I went to the store because they had the 30% on all fabrics going on at Hobby Lobby. So I was able to get one whole part. I bought 3 pieces of fabric, so essentially one of them was free because it was 30% discount on the regular prices. And I look for the less expensive. These are not the $12 a yard. These are the $6 or $7 a yard pieces that I buy. And of course, there's always those wonderful little odd fabrics you find if you go into the thrift stores and you find old clothing which has something that you just don't see in the stores anymore. That's always fun. And actually, if you do thrift store shopping for fabrics, your average shirt, when you trim it down to rectangles, and you've got those little odd pieces that you could throw into your stuffing bin, you should get about a yard and a half from an average regular size shirt. And that's pretty good, actually, when you think about it. The story I was going to tell. I grew up in a textile town, and sewing was, the ladies did the sewing. My mother hated to sew. She didn't. But the neighbors did, and my aunts did. In fact, one of my aunts worked sewing in the factories. She worked in a shop that made children's winter clothing. So, fabric was in our blood. And this is a very ethnic town, too. A lot of the school teachers in the public high school were Anglo, but the rest of us all came from hyphenated Catholic parochial schools. And it was only us rebels who refused to go to the Catholic high school and went to the public high school. I was one of those, because I'd had it 8th grade. No more. I'm tired of the penguins. And you know what I mean if you're Catholic. I love the nuns. They taught so much that I see that people don't get in most education. They're beautiful people. They loved us. They were part of our family. But I still think of them as penguins. Anyway, so there I am. And one lady, friend of my mother's, was working in the textile mills. But completely unconnected to her job, somehow she came across a couple of yards of this beautiful paisley fabric. And it was not even the kind that her factory made, because she worked at Cranston Print. And if you're into quilts, you know about Cranston Print. It's one of the best. They had the best quality prints on the fabric because they were sitting right on top of spring water, fresh spring water straight out of the ground up in Webster, Massachusetts. So this cloth that she had was not Cranston's cotton. It was some kind of imported paisley textured cloth. It was really very nice. And she had no use for it. So she offered it to my mother, who said, oh, Denny, or Denise, my nickname was Denny in the family, but Denise is in home ec, and they're sewing. So she gave it to me. And I brought it to school, and I showed it to the teacher. I can't remember her name, but I can see her standing there in shock. This woman went into shock because I walked in with a couple of yards of fabric and asked her to suggest what I should make with it, what kind of pattern I should buy. And she said, you got the fabric without reading how much you need? They write it on the back of the pattern, how much you need. You read that, and you buy that much. And you got the fabric without doing that? It was like, yeah. You know, why not? Then she asked, and she was just so furious, and I didn't know what to do. I was, you know, like, oh my God, you know, she's going to have a heart attack in front of me. And she says, where'd you get that fabric? And I said, my mother's friend. And of course, she knew my family, because my uncle was the head of the union, the local, I think it was number 259, United Textile Workers, at Cranston Print. So she knew who my family was. And so she knew, you know, someone over at Cranston that gave me the cloth. And she started accusing me and my family of stealing the fabric from Cranston. And I'm like, but it didn't even come from there. You know, that Mrs. Rafferty works there, but I don't think they even make this at Cranston. But she was in shock at the idea that anyone would have the fabric in their hands before they decided what they're going to make with it. And I just have to laugh. Every time I see all my YouTube stitchery friends trading ideas and talking about ruffling through their stashes and going off to some, you know, fabric shop or thrift shop and finding something, and oh, I've had this fabric for 5 years and I just thought it was so beautiful and I finally thought of something I can do with it. You know, every one of us has heard one of our stitchery friends make that kind of video. What was her name? I think it was, no, Miss Franklin was the art teacher. She was another piece of work. This one, anyway, this lady was, I really wonder if she went home and had a stroke on account of me bringing in that couple of yards of paisley. Oh, well, it takes all kinds to make a world, doesn't it? Anyway, I'm going to get back to what I was doing. I am making progress, on my my brain dead Victorian. For all my new friends that are showing up from the quilt chat rooms that I've been poking my nose into, I'm so glad you're here, because I've got, my channel has gone from 100 to, last I checked, a little over 120 in one day. And those are all my quilting friends coming in. And I'm going to start doing, you know what I'm going to do? I know I have some stupid videos where I had let the trolls trigger me. I decided what I'm going to do, because I need some of those videos to stay out there, because there are some serious trolls who've spread some vicious lies, and I feel I have to answer them. But in order to prevent it from dominating my channel, which is supposed, that's why I call myself Good Stuff Ninja. It's about making good stuff, not about fighting with trolls. So I'm going to put all the ranting videos, unlist them, and put them in a playlist. So if you really want to check out the drama, you can go there. But I'll start doing live streams and get my StreamYard hooked up again so that I can have guests on. And my Brain Dead Victorian is one list, and I'm starting another list for the cathedral windows. But the Brain Dead Victorian gets its name because I had originally started a Brain Dead quilt, which I always have a Brain Dead quilt going. I make a slab, an unplanned pile of fabric out of just random things sewn together, and you end up with something like this. And then when I get a lot of it, I just sew it together with some strips and make a utilitarian like this one. This one's really nice and heavy because it's got a big blanket in it, and it's a lot of denim. And the back is a thrift shop, 100% cotton chic. So that's one of my frugal quilts. Anyway, I had a bunch of the Brain Dead. And I was, starting to put it together into these little squares to make a quilt. And I came across a bunch of people in YouTube doing the Victorian crazy quilting where you embroider over the, where's the rest of it? Here it is. Okay. You embroider designs over the patches. So, combining my Brain Dead quilt with my Crazy Victorian, it's the Brain Dead Victorian. And I've already got a list up where I've been following it through. This is the 9th block. It's going to be 12 blocks, so I'm pretty close to finished on this one as far as the top's concerned. And then my next big project that I'm going to start a new playlist for is the cathedral windows. And then, of course, I'll have to do a playlist for the Alice's Wonderland blocks that with the other ladies, and I'll probably pull other videos. And let me know if you want to be part of this, because YouTube has something where you can share your playlist in such a way that 2 or 3 people can contribute to the same playlist. And I'd like to set something up with that, so I'm going to do that. And probably with that group, Block of the Month Club. Yeah, there's that. And my other videos that I plan for this year, I do cooking videos. I'm really into frugal grocery management. And I like to do those because right now people are going through all kinds of changes. If you have any family members or you know people who are on food stamps, for example, they're getting hit hard by these new regulations, which frankly are necessary regulations because children in those families have not been well nourished, and it's not the parents' fault that they, like look at that crazy home ec teacher I had back in the day when they even had home ec. They don't even teach home ec anymore. So these young mothers don't learn how to manage basic home cooking. And a lot of women have been conditioned and brainwashed, frankly, to believe that home cooking is very hard and time-consuming. But when you organize it right, it's not hard at all. And you can have a busy life and still have a lot of home-cooked foods that cuts your grocery bill down in more than half. I would say that it's possible to be spending 1/3 of what you normally spend on food if you learn the system. And you don't have to give up, comfort food and sweets and all that other stuff that we're not supposed to have. That's a problem now with food stamps saying you can't buy certain things. It's making people angry because they feel like, well, I want to be able to give my kids a soda pop once in a while, or, bake a cake or whatever, or not bake a cake, but give them a bag of cookies. Well, when you start organizing it properly, you can have the same things. In fact, one of the things I'm still working on, I've got to learn a little bit better, but I started doing it. Make your own Rice Krispies. There are some videos, some very good videos on how to make your own cornflakes, make your own Rice Krispies. All the foods, the breakfast foods that people like that they think you can only get from a store, you can make at home. And again, a fraction of the expense of buying the actual box. So anyway, so I'm going to continue with those videos. And yeah, thank you for showing up. Oh, I'm looking for as if it were a live stream. I'm not streaming this. I'm making this as a video ahead of time. I'm going to upload it. But I will start doing more live streams. Thank you. Denise Matteau, over and out.